Before the season even kicks off, soccer fans are already making predictions. Who wins the league? Who qualifies for Europe? And who's lifting the trophy at season's end? On Kalshi, America's #1 prediction market platform, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use code CUP26 to get $10 when you trade 10. KALSHI, Kalshi. Trade the beautiful game. 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory.
This episode is brought to you by Google Chrome. You think you know a browser, but Gemini and Chrome? That's new. It can help you with practically anything on the web, like restoring a vintage motorcycle from a 50-page restoration blog, or finally break down that long article you've had open for weeks. Gemini and Chrome is here for it. Ready to make anything online make sense? There's no place like Chrome. Check responses, setup required, compatibility and availability varies, 18 plus.
Hey parents, how do you make smarter choices for your kids' college today? That's where Sally can help. With Sally, you can find scholarships, funding options, tools, and guidance all in one place. And if you need a loan, Sally has options for different families and different situations. College is only worth it if you do it right. So don't just help your kid go. Help them go smarter. Sally.com/GoParents.
Hello and welcome to How We're the Podcast. It's Martin, and we've got the very first episode of a brand new series that delves into the history of Sunderland AFC for you today. We've called it the Sunder Years. What will you do if Kelvin sings out of tune? You'll probably find out soon enough. The premise of the Sunder Years is very, very simple. We pick a year and look at the person who made some headlines, a game that's lived long in memory ever since, and an anniversary that occurred during those 12 months. In reality, it's just an excuse for the On This Week crew to get back together again regularly, because I simply couldn't get by without a little help from my friends. So first of all, we will say good morning to Kelvin Beattie. Morning, Kelvin.
What can you get when you sing out of tune? Morning, lads.
Excellent. See, I promised you it wouldn't take long, and Kelvin's delivered. Brilliant stuff. And of course, we've got Andrew Smithson with us as well. Andrew, good morning.
Morning, Martin. Couple of the lines in that introduction there were absolutely brilliant. So well done. It's a good start to this new format.
It is. It's probably all downhill from here, but we've made a good start, and that's the important thing, isn't it? First impressions and all that sort of stuff. And Andrew, the format that we've decided upon, we've used as an excuse really just to talk about some of the things that we want to talk about, really. But we've picked a pretty good year to start with, haven't we?
We have, yes. The format, can I just let listeners know, was, if it works, was a joint effort. If it doesn't work, it was all Martin's. It was all Martin's idea. So just bear that in mind. But yeah, you're right. I am looking forward to catching up with you, and hopefully Chris will be able to join us on episodes down the line as well. We used to love our little early morning get-togethers, but the new format, we thought we'd start with a bang. We are looking at 1999, folks.
Yes, indeed. We are going to party like it's 1999, the final year of the last millennium, and one that is very, very fondly remembered as Sunderland emerged out of the Championship and returned to the Premier League under Peter Reid. It was the second season at the Stadium of Light at the start of that year, wasn't it? We played the first season, obviously got beaten in the playoff final, came back for the 98-99 season with Thomas Sorensen and Paul Butler and people in the team, and stormed to the Championship. But we're going to start off this episode talking about a player from 1999. This is a new signing. Now, after we won the Championship, there was a bit of turnover in the playing staff, wasn't there? And, it's easy to kind of forget that when you look back now, because of obviously what followed. But obviously Lee Clark had a bit of a fashion faux pas. Andy Melville left on the free transfer. Mickey Bridges went off to Leeds. Alan Johnson was chucked in the reserves by Peter Reid. And they were four of our star players, really. I know Bridges filled in for Kevin Phillips an awful lot, didn't he? Because Phillips missed a large chunk of that season through injury. And during that summer, Peter Reid wanted to sign some experience for the Premier League. And we were linked with all sorts of players. I remember Miguel Angel Nadal was apparently very close to sign. The Beast of Barcelona was very close to joining the club. But we did get Steve Bold from Arsenal, Thomas Helmer from Bayern Munich, although his Sunderland career didn't exactly take off the way that we hoped it would. John Oster came in from Everton. Eric Roy to the locals arrived, as well as a chocolate fireguard from Denmark. But there was one, Stein and Andrew in particular, that really grabbed some attention and was a massive, massive, massive part of that team, wasn't it?
Yeah, you're right. You're dead right. We are going to look at Stefan Schwartz, but Martin, some of the names you touched upon there was quite interesting, because as I was researching this, their names were popping up in the same articles as well. So Alan Johnson, at one point, I had no recollection of this, but there was a point where it looked as if Alan Johnson had got back into Reid's good books and was going to be brought back into the fold. And
Oh, really?
yeah,
I
so
don't remember that.
well, no, neither could I. So as always, when I'm researching it, I could have gone off in many tangents. There was all sorts happening that summer. When I look back at that time, I remember there being a little bit of fear, because we had only gone down from the Premier League a couple of seasons before, and I know we'd taken Division 1 by storm, but there was the Lee Clark incident, there was the Alan Johnson incident. Who was the Bridges? Bridges was the third one. We
And
were
Melville.
yes,
Melville
yeah,
played pretty much every game, didn't he?
yeah, he did. You're right. So we were losing some quality. We were going into a division where we'd, well, I suppose we had struggled. I think the team that went down in '97 was very unfortunate, but there were concerns. Could the team keep it going? Was there enough top level experience? Was there enough quality in the group to get us through? It's one thing steamrolling everyone in Division 1, but then going into the Premier League, it's a new challenge. I think the signing of Steve Bold, and I think the signing of Stefan Schwartz went a long way to calming those fears. I mean, they were both ex-Arsenal. They both had brilliant CVs in the game. And yeah, Martin, you were the one that suggested Stefan Schwartz at the top. So, like, is this somebody we could look at? And it was one of those where the first suggestion was just perfect, because he did have a huge influence on us. Signing him was really important. I think he brought a lot to the squad. So basically, it was either going to be Stefan Schwartz that I looked at, or Carsten Fredgaard. You know, it was it was it was a
Close call,
toss-up.
wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a toss-up. We signed him on the 29th of July. He came from Valencia. He'd previously played for Fiorentina and Benfica. He was a Sweden international, you know, won major trophies in several countries. So he was a proper big name. The story first started coming out on the 12th of July, so middle of the month. Ian Laws in the Echo, sadly Ian's no longer with us, but he was a writer who I really enjoyed reading. I liked him a lot. He is one of the first to touch on reports that Peter Reid is in talks with Schwartz. A couple of weeks earlier, I don't know if you remember this, gents, but you know when Michael Gray played for England at Wembley against Sweden?
Yes. Yeah.
Stefan Schwartz was one of the players he was up against. Schwartz played in that game. So there's rumblings, and as is the case with all transfer links over the next few days, there gets to be a bit of momentum. Graham Anderson follows up the next day and says that the pair had met in Denmark. Schwartz was home in Malmo, but fortunately at the time, Sunderland were in Denmark on a pre-season training camp, so that made things quite easy, I believe. As I mentioned earlier, you see other names popping up. The 13th was also the day that Thomas Helmer's arrival is confirmed. He'd signed late the previous night, and it's not long before you start seeing newspapers talking about this potential central midfield of Schwartz and Helmer, two like really experienced, really high respected players. Everybody's thinking, oh, this could be like a fantastic base for the team. Didn't quite pan out that way, as we know. 14th, again in the Echo, we are told that Reid and club secretary Mark Blackburn were both confident. They felt the talks had gone well. Wages were not thought to be an issue. We're looking at around about 20,000 a week, which would have made Schwartz pretty much the highest paid player in our history at that time. Club were happy with that. Didn't think it was too much. They thought it was fair, but they did admit they were expecting to have to break the transfer record to bring him in. We've said this before, but it amazes me just how open these deals were. Everything's cloak and dagger now.
Yeah.
Sunderland haven't come out and said this. It's all very much along the lines of sources have indicated that they'll have to break the transfer record. Basically, Reid will have said it on the phone, but will have just said, lads, don't quote me directly.
Yeah.
You know.
But, it's a whole different time, isn't it, for transfers? There's no social media. The internet's in its infancy. So there's a little bit of rumor and stuff online, but, nothing like there is today. So you'd imagine it made transfers an awful lot easier to conduct in some respect. Obviously, people didn't have the social media and the internet to put pressure on either clubs or buying clubs or selling clubs or what have you. And, we've seen it play out recently, haven't we, with different messages going out via different people and, different, even different sort of counter rumors being pushed out to then make a selling club think, oh, bollocks are going to go after somebody else. We better act here. So it was a whole different. I'm sure like all those things went on in the background there and on phone calls and faxes probably and obviously emails and stuff. But it was a very different time for transfers, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, you've got now, Martin. You've got on ready to go the Sunderland message board. You've got people who are able to track flights coming in and out of the region, and there's a plane set to land from such and such. Could so and so be on it? So every aspect of a deal is followed closely. Whereas back in those days, some of these things might have been happening. We're not to know. But yeah,
If it wasn't on teletext or CFAX, it hadn't happened.
Well, if it wasn't on teletext or CFAX, I didn't want to know, Mark.
Sunderland Club Call might have broken the news, but there you
go. Did the Journal and the Echo not have a reporter on 24-hour watch outside Jackie White's in the
Journal and the what, Kelvin?
The Echo.
That's 2 recordings in a row because Gav did this yesterday where I could see the joke from like a mile down the road.
Yeah. Hey, somebody switch his microphone off like you switch mine off sometimes, you buggers.
Martin, you played that perfectly. That was textbook. That was brilliant. What was Jackie White's was the question. I think there might have been journalists hanging around Jackie White's 24/7, but that was just because the mince and dumplings were good. Nothing to do with trying to get a transfer scoop.
Aye. Very good.
Martin, that was like watching Regis Lebris in a press conference. Just the way you delivered that, it was just brilliant.
Reggie's got a better poker face, I think. The
Nah, my
listeners.
poker face isn't very good.
The anticipation was all over your face as you were coming into that.
Anyway, Seven Schwartz.
Yes. Right. We're now on to the 15th of July. And touching on what you said earlier, Liverpool have now emerged as possible rivals for his signature. But that looked genuine. I don't think that was what you get now, where an agent is just told to like mention a couple of names and apply pressure. It looked fairly legitimate. Liverpool at the time were trying to bring in the lad at Newcastle, the German Didi Hamann. Yeah, but that move wasn't running too smoothly, so they were legitimately looking at Schwartz from what we could tell. As a result of that, the national papers start picking up on the story. By the 16th, we are reading that Schwartz has agreed in principle and is due to head to England for a medical. It goes quiet for a few days. There's usually a line at the bottom of articles now just saying, oh, and by the way, Stefan Schwartz's potential move is just bubbling under in the background. Again, if you were to talk about transfers now, I think if we had 3 or 4 days in a row of silence, people fill the void now, don't they? And the deal's off, or Schwartz's demands are too high, or I don't know, Schwartz is a pure rat. You get all of this type of stuff now, but things were just working in the background. 22nd of July, we're led to believe, and again, this is now in national papers as much as local papers, we're being told that it's a done deal virtually, but that it won't be signed off until one of Schwartz's representatives returns from holiday. I would love to know which football agent or football lawyer or advisor is taking time off in pre-season. It again, it just wouldn't
Big
happen.
clients on the verge of a transfer. You'd think you could cut short your week in Faliraki to get back, couldn't you?
yeah, he's rented like, I don't know, a caravan in Camber Sands or something. He's like, no, hold me calls. I don't want to know. So yeah, that was an odd one. Again, we have to go a few more days. Pretty quiet. 28th, Ian Laws picks things back up in the Echo, 28th of July. And interestingly, this is the first time things don't seem to be running smoothly. Schwartz is believed to be having second thoughts because he wasn't satisfied that the social side of the move would be right for his family. And I've got a quote here. Peter Reid was apparently putting on a brave face. And Reid, who was always quite good for a quote back then, said, I always thought I was all right socially. So he was taking it in good spirits. But he says, I'm still optimistic the move will go through. Unfortunately, though, nowadays, transfers don't just involve players and manager. Now, this is something you heard a lot at the time and you heard a lot since. You've got lawyers and agents, and contracts are massive things now. It's hard, but we'll keep on trying and hopefully it will happen. Schwartz is stalling because he wants to be sure his family can settle in the Northeast. Now, people get a bit sniffy and say things like, oh, the player should just tell his wife and kids to do as they're told. That's not how life works. You're bound to want to make sure your family are on board. with a move, particularly if it's to a different country. If a footballer's not happy in his home life, they're not going to perform to the best of their ability. So I remember at the time there'd be whispers and there'd be jokes about this type of thing, and who wears the trousers in that house? It's madness. Of course, players should involve their families.
But, Andrew, just, and we all love the Northeast, blah, blah, blah. The 10 years before that, Stefan Schwartz had played for Benfica, so he had a few years in Lisbon. Arsenal, he had a year in London. Yeah, 3 years in Florence with Fiorentina, and then had a year in Valencia. So, you can understand why you might want to have a chat with his missus and make sure that everything's
Sunderland
all
just
right.
naturally follows on really after that.
Oh, it
doesn't it?
does. Yeah, that's right.
2 words, we've mentioned them already, Jackie White. All right?
The jewel in the crown.
Yeah. I will just point out, I have said before, I actually do use Jackie Whites. I like Jackie Whites. I don't know why it always ends up being the punchline. After Peter Reid's quotes, it then follows with quotes from Stefan Schwartz, which again, you don't get now. You would just get the players or the managers just saying, "Oh no, I don't talk about things like that. We don't talk about players who are with other clubs." Schwartz now would just bat it off with, "I'm a Valencia player. I'm happy to focus on Valencia." But no. There's no subtlety here. He says, "It is a big change for the family to move to Sunderland, and I have to be sure that my family will enjoy it. I have told Sunderland that I want some extra days to think over the move. Maybe all the problems can be resolved, but I am not too sure. The club have made a big effort to arrange the social side of things for my family, and I have daily contact with the club." I don't know if the social side is maybe lost in translation ever so slightly, because that sounds as if, the club have hired a bouncy castle for your kids, and we've
Starting to create a wine over.
we've bought your wife a pass for the gym at the Crow Tree. I don't know if that's quite what he's trying to say. But the club have made a big impression on me, and the manager has been a great guy. If I am going to do a 100% job in the Premier League, I have to be sure that everything is all right. I have not signed any binding agreement with Sunderland. Here we go. I belong to Valencia as long as I haven't signed for any other club. I think he points out as well that other clubs have contacted me, but he's not interested in that. I don't think this is a ruse to try and get more money out of the club. I think it's genuine. Schwartz is being quite honest. But that article ends with the line that Schwartz left Arsenal for Fiorentina in 1995 after his family failed to settle in London. So, you get the impression there that there's something that wasn't quite right. He wasn't just using it as a tactic to squeeze more money out of someone. So there we go. Suddenly this move looks to be in the balance, and then bang, following day, it's done and dusted. Front page of the Echo, what do we see? The obligatory scarf pick. There's Schwartz at the Stadium of Light, holding a scarf up. It's probably still got the tag on it from the club shop, brand new out of the packet. I like how on the front of the Echo they've managed to spell his name incorrectly on the caption. Just welcome. He is this big star. He's a household name. Just we can't spell it correctly. The front page of the Echo tells us that it's a record fee. We've spent close to around £4 million, and that he signed a 4-year deal. This is a player who's only just turned 30. He signed a 4-year deal. This was the Thursday that this broke, Thursday, 29th of July. I remember this day vividly because that was the day I got my first job offer. Like I'd been looking for a bit of part-time
The
work.
proofreader at the Echo.
Well, it certainly wasn't a 4-year deal with a fee. My mum and dad weren't being paid £4 million by the shop to secure my services. So it was a big day for Stefan Schwartz. It was a big day for me, and
What was his
also
job?
just working in a shop. Nothing, nothing
Jackie
major.
White.
Yeah.
You
If it,
were at Jackie Waits, weren't you?
if it was Jackie White, I'd still be there. I wouldn't have moved on anywhere. The irony of me being a proofreader for the Echo, I don't know why I pointed out that spelling error, given the amount of mistakes I make on these pods and the amount of mistakes I make writing for Rugby Report. But it's done. We've got some quotes again from the player and from Reid. The club have made a big impression on me, says Schwartz. They have taken care of everything, even those things that are more important than money. So that's touching on the family aspect. You have to take care that things are right with the social life when you have a family and you are moving clubs. I appreciate very much that the club and the boss have done a lot of things to satisfy myself and my family. They were very understanding and know you have to feel well off the pitch as well on it. Schwartz then says, he's confident that the team can make their mark in the Premiership, not the Premier League back then. It was the Premiership. It's this thing we're saying about Sunderland are going to be able to make it. He says you have Manchester United, Arsenal and Chelsea who are the best, but I think Sunderland can fight well with the other teams. We will go out and try to win every game. Sunderland fans have also made their mark. The supporters were a big part of me wanting to come here. Sunderland played in the First Division last season and still had a full stadium most of the time, which is very impressive. I know that people in the Northeast are passionate about football. They are fanatical in a good way. So, there's always going to be a line, isn't there, when you join a new club? You were either a boyhood fan of the team, or about the fans, and they're the best. They're the best fans in the land.
It's noticeable. He didn't say I tuned into Premier Passions. I love that show because Sunderland Till I Die seems to be the one that everyone's watching now, isn't it?
Yeah, I saw the players getting screamed at by Peter Reid and Bobby Saxton, and I thought that's the team for me.
I've heard all about the goal taps, and I want to experience them for myself.
Yeah. No, there's not a single mention of goal taps in this. It's staggering, isn't it? Manager Peter Reid was overjoyed to clinch the deal, which appeared to be in jeopardy this week. Reid joked, "He is a top quality player, and I think what clinched the deal was that I promised to take him on a couple of nights out." Do you reckon the journalists are like, yeah, very good, Peter, but can we just get a sensible quote? Can you just stop cracking on about getting on the bevies on a night out? I have watched him on a number of occasions, and I think he will be a great leader for us in the middle of the park. Stefan is eager to play for Sunderland, and he may play part in Kevin Ball's testimonial on Saturday, which was another thing that was building up in the papers in the days leading up to Schwartz. They were given the big sell for Kevin Ball's testimonial. And then a few more quotes that follow on in the Hartlepool Daily Mail a few days later. Schwartz, invariably, this is another thing you always get new arrivals to talk about. The weather may not be as warm, he's saying, in comparison to the Spanish climate, but I have a feeling the people may be warmer. Again, the Sunderland supporters will have a big part to play. They are part of the team and will be in there fighting together. So, the usual platitudes, but he seems genuinely happy to be here. I certainly remember being excited in the long run at the time, and then in the long run, it turned out to be we were right to be excited. He was an important player for us. Everybody talks about the space clause. You know, he apparently signed a space clause in his contract saying that he wouldn't get on a
Oh,
rocket.
didn't he have a ticket for the first commercial passenger flight to the moon or something?
Yeah, it was along those lines. Now, again, we talk about transfers now and how you get to know every inch of the deal. There was no mention of this at the time. I don't think that came out until a lot later. Nobody seemed to be aware of it. Whereas, come on, if somebody got wind of that now, that would be across Twitter, and there'd be memes and people doing jokes, and there'd just be all sorts. But if you ignore,
I was just going to say, he really was an out of this world signing, Stefan Schwartz, wasn't he?
this new recording platform, Martin, have you not got like some sort of sound effect to drop in there?
You have got a few, actually. Let's have a look.
Well, I think you might do. I'm sure Gav was telling us there's a couple of options for Kelvin.
Just for me, like.
There you go.
Thank you.
But yeah, there was. However, go on. What's your follow-up, Kelvin?
I was just going to say I'm here all week.
Martin, you sound like one of those shock jocks in America who like plays all the sound effects and that. But there was the space clause that we found about. If you put that to one side, I don't know if you remember this, gents. Towards the end of his time at Sunderland, I think he'd already played his final appearance. Injuries were catching up with him, so he probably wasn't in the best of fettle. Do you remember he got contacted by the police because some youths in Newcastle lobbed
Snowballs.
Aye.
Yes.
And he apparently got out of the car and remonstrated with them, and it led to the police being involved. I mean, I don't know if it was an anti-Sunderland thing and they spotted that it was a Sunderland player, or it was just, I don't know, just unlucky. You know, these kids were messing around. I mean, you would have thought Stefan Schwartz would have been used to a bit of snow. You know, he would have been driving around in his Volvo, which could have certainly coped.
Don't know if there's much of that in Valencia and Lisbon, mind.
Fair. So a Sunderland footballer who was banned from travelling to space, he was in trouble with the law for a snowball fight. So he had a bit of a backstory. But put all of that to one side, he was, in my opinion, he was a superb player. He played, I think it was 75, 76 times for us. Really influential on the pitch. And then in later years, once he'd retired, there was a few times he was linked with the manager's job.
He was, yeah.
There was a few times he was rumoured to be involved in groups looking to buy the club. So I think he has an affection for Sunderland. And reading his entry in the Absolute Record, I don't think I remember this from the time. He travelled over to London to watch us at Wembley in the League One playoff final. So I think he genuinely sees Sunderland as a part of his life and appreciated his time here. Yeah. So just as well the move came to pass, and he was happy with the social side of things, because he was a big part of Sunderland, I reckon.
No, he was, and I think when you look back at his career at Sunderland on the field, he's obviously brought in to this newly promoted club as a central midfield player. I think he was a Swedish captain at the time, but he was renowned as a central midfield player. I think from memory, did he play the first 1 or 2 games in central midfield?
Yeah.
And then we moved him out onto the left.
Yeah.
And he played a lot of football for us on the left-hand side of midfield. He did not complain once, as far as we know, but he certainly went on the pitch every week and did a fantastic job on the left-hand side of midfield. And I actually think that helped Mickey Gray so much because Gray could just bomb up and down, bomb up and down, bomb up and down. And that kind of made his reputation to a large extent because that was his first season playing left back in the Premier League. Obviously, he had a season, hadn't he, a couple of years earlier in top flight. But Schwartz was fantastic at doing the role that he maybe wasn't that accustomed to and potentially didn't actually enjoy playing as much. And for somebody to come in of that stature, because he was like the Granit Xhaka almost of that time. He had a reputation as a fierce competitor, somebody who could lead the team, a captain sort of type of figure, although he didn't get the captaincy as Sunderland. But just to come in and, all right, I'm playing left midfield, that's fine. And he just got on with it. I think that sort of spoke volumes to him and his character and to his desire to make it work. And it's interesting, isn't it, when you look back at that on off sort of aspect of the transfer and making sure that everything's going to be right before you take a new job. We've probably all been in a situation where you've taken a job or done something, a snap decision because the money's a bit better or whatever. And after a few weeks, you go, this isn't actually right. I've done it. I've made a mistake here. And, it can be very easy to overlook certain things. So the fact that he's actually taking time and going, no, this is the right move for me, that gives you an awful lot of reassurance. It must have given Reid a lot of reassurance at the time. That he actually got somebody coming in who's considered every aspect of it. He's took his time, fair enough. Come in the dressing room. And, we'll talk a little bit about this later on as well, but this was a time where there was a bit of change in the dressing room because, we've talked about the players who left during the summer. A couple of months later, Kevin Ball leaves.
Yeah.
Kevin Ball goes to Fulham. Was it Fulham? Yes, he went to Fulham first, didn't he, before Burnley? And he, so Bally leaves. That's a massive character to lose out of the dressing room. And, Schwartz obviously contributed to creating that atmosphere. And we had a couple of very good seasons. And I actually think Schwartz's injury, because he got injured on international duty in the November time of that. Was it the second season or the third season he was here?
Oh, there's a question.
I think it was the season that would finish 17th. I think he got injured in the November of that season, but it might have been the year before, but I think it was the third season. And I actually think that was a massive factor in what then transpired with the team, Peter Reid, all that sort of stuff. Schwartz was still a massively influential player and a fantastically good player still. I remember that goal he scored at home against Arsenal.
Oh, yes.
That goal in the North End was just superb,
Brilliant.
Wasn't it?
Yeah.
Stuck it right, against his former club, and he quite happily celebrated, which you always love to see against your former club. None of this nonsense about not celebrating. But he was just such a good player. I think he's kind of a little bit underrated in some respects.
I definitely would agree with you on that. When he came, I think I was still upset at the shenanigans with Johnston, Lee Clark, who I thought had a fantastic sort of season with us,
Oh, you're superb.
and I was dead.
Superb.
I was gutted at where that all landed. And then Andy Melville, who I know you lads like him, but I thought he did a good job in the promotion season. And I didn't get at the time, there were two things happened. We lost Lee Clark, we lost Johnson going down that wing, and Andy Melville moves off, and he brings in Steve Bould. And I'm thinking, this bloke's, you're saying all the crack was Melville wasn't quick enough for the Premiership. Is Steve Bould going to be quick enough for the Premiership? Hey, what do I know? What do I know? That boy, Bould, comes in and plays like I'd never watched a centre half like that since David Watson. He was brilliant. The time he played for us. And Schwartz, I wasn't I'm not saying that I didn't think he wasn't a footballer. I just couldn't see where he was going to land in our team. I was much more sort of excited about the idea of the Angel of Death, Nadal, and Kevin Ball playing together than I was about. I thought that's going to be some midfield than I was about Schwartz coming in. But my God, I doubt that we were 10 games into the season. I'm like going to games and thinking, I am so looking forward to watching this boy play. He just totally he eased my angst almost within a couple of games, and that lovely relationship that he had with Gray. Yeah, I think you're dead right. He had a lovely sort of playing relationship with Mickey Gray, and he was so like smart on the pitch, Stefan Schwartz. It was like he knew when to cover, he knew when to let him go.
Right.
He put so many. You might call them just little passes, to him, but they were quite often they were in space. And Gray loved to gallop, and he would go. I just thought he was, but 10 games in, I totally changed my mind and had my hand up and was saying, "This boy is a baller."
Oh,
He's
yeah.
one of my, he is one of my favorite players from that era. But I would suggest that him and Schwartz, for a lot of us, would have been two of the biggest surprises, given where we were given where we were when the season started, and given how fun people were. I mean, Lee Clark had really grown in the affections of Sunderland fans, and Magic Johnson was, he was fantastic to watch, real entertainer, really exciting, really looking forward to seeing him in the first division, in the Premiership, and bang, we lose him. And Andy Melville had his fan club, didn't he? I'm sitting looking at two of them. So he was I just thought, my God, what are we doing? What's happening? And then these two come in. It was brilliant. Bold and him were brilliantly calming, brilliantly sort of streetwise on the pitch. The two of them, fantastic. They were a lovely surprise, the two of them. And actually, I spoke to Stefan Schwartz. You're right about the playoff final. He rolled into that because he rolled into I think I've said to you, the concert branch. They always go to whenever we get to Wembley. Listen to me, like we're there every year. We might be. But whenever they go to Wembley, they hire a club that's literally right next door to Wembley. I think it's called the Crystal Club. And Kevin Phillips, there was a gaggle of ex-players rolled into the club and were not, speaking away with the fans. And Stefan Schwartz rolled in, and I did sort of speak to him. He dead calm, dead sort of within himself kind of lad, quite confident lad, but and very, very easy with the fans. I mean, there were some people in some bonny states, but he's a lovely, easy way with them. Terribly impressive player. So he was.
With Schwartz, I don't know if you've listened to the podcast that Lupo and I did recently. He talked about, when he'd been watching Premier League football in years gone by, he goes, I could play there. Look at all of the time that they've got in the ball. Look at all the space that they've got. And he said it's only until you actually get there, you realise it's actually significantly faster, but the good players create the time and space to receive the ball, pass the ball, and it makes it look as if they've got loads of time on the ball.
Mm.
And Schwartz was one of the first players I can remember watching in the flesh at Sunderland who was able to create that space for himself. We'd had, we've seen lots of good players over the years, and Kelvin, obviously, you've seen more than me and Andrew. But it was until he arrived, I think I was the first genuine world-class player that we've seen in the flesh. You can argue, chuck different names in, but it was somebody coming from, an international captain from a team overseas, experience is coming in, and he never looked hurried. He
No,
always had the yard of
no.
space, passed precisely and crisply, passed intelligently. He always seemed to have eyes in the back of his head. And it was, again, similar to Xhaka in a lot
Xhaka,
of respect
yeah.
on the ball.
Yeah.
Because he finds the yard of space. And there was just an intelligence to his game that I think we'd rarely witnessed over the past 50 or so years at Sunderland before he arrived. So he was a player who he kind of realigns your expectations or what you actually want to see from new signings and new players coming in, because he could just do so much. And I think he influenced people like Gavin McCann and other players around him like that, because they could see what he was doing, learn from him, all that sort of stuff. I would say without Schwartz coming in, Gavin McCann doesn't get an England cap because he made him look a better player. So anyway, that is Stefan Schwartz, and probably the signing of 1999. I think there's a few you could chuck in and argue the toss about, but I would say Stefan Schwartz is right up there. We're going to take a very quick break, and after a couple of ads, we are going to be back to talk about one of the games that we remember most from 1999.
Before the season even kicks off, soccer fans are already making predictions. Who wins the league? Who qualifies for Europe? And who's lifting the trophy at season's end? On Kalshi, America's #1 prediction market platform, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use code CUP26 to get $10 when you trade 10. KALSHI, Kalshi. Trade the beautiful game. 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory.
This episode is brought to you by Google Chrome. You think you know a browser, but Gemini and Chrome? That's new. It can help you with practically anything on the web, like restoring a vintage motorcycle from a 50-page restoration blog, or finally break down that long article you've had open for weeks. Gemini and Chrome is here for it. Ready to make anything online make sense? There's no place like Chrome. Check responses, setup required, compatibility and availability varies, 18 plus.
Welcome back to How Are the podcast for part 2 of the Sunder Years, and we are into 1999. Now, before we get into some of the memorable games, Andrew, you've been doing some digging to have a look at some of the things that were going on, newspapers, headlines, TV shows, movies, all sorts of stuff from the last year of the millennium.
Yeah, I thought I would set the scene in famous last words I said before we hit record. Oh, don't worry. I'll rattle through these, Martin, but I've just seen how long we've been talking already. We've only got through one subject, so old habits, old habits die hard. Yeah, we had a fair bit happening in 1999. As you say, it was the end of the millennium, so there was a lot of talk about new dawns, new eras. There was the whole millennium bug thing. The Euro was launched at the start of the year. I know the UK didn't join it, but it has impacted life for a lot of people. I still have to work out in my head if Sunderland are linked with a player nowadays from the continent and it's in euros. It still takes me a couple of moments to work out what that means in pounds sterling. We didn't join the Euro, but we did introduce a minimum wage that year in the UK. Glenn Hoddle, this was a huge story, gave his infamous interview to the Times where he expressed some opinions about people who were born with disabilities, which were distasteful to say the least. Rod Hull and Ernie Wise, they both die in the march. So there's two big, well-known comedians. The Millennium Dome is completed. That was much talked about. They finally finished it in the June, and of course it was officially opened on the 31st of December, along with the London Eye. Tracy Emin, I don't know if you remember this one, but I recall there being a lot of talk about this. She exhibits a piece of art called My Bed at the Tate Gallery. It was shortlisted for a Turner Prize, but this was very much one of those stories of like, isn't art rubbish? Isn't look at this wasted time. This doesn't tell us anything. This doesn't develop the human race. Tracy Emin's just having a laugh here. I do remember it being there being like a lot of back and forth around that. Nissan, the Prime, I think it's pronounced Primera, but that gets launched, and of course that's to be built in Sunderland. And you said, Martin, earlier, you said about how the internet was in its infancy. Estimates at the end of the year were that around 12 million people, which is 20% of the population, had access to the internet. I don't necessarily know if that was access in the home, though, because I think at this point it was mainly at college that I used the internet. I can't remember when we got it in the house, but I certainly wasn't on the internet 24/7
Oh, no.
in the way
Well,
people
the thing
are
is,
now.
now, in those days, it sounds really old, don't it? Like, I remember at uni, as I was at uni at the time, and we had internet access there. We had to go to the library to go on the computers that had internet access. At home, we had the internet. We had to like get the cable from the phone and plug it into the thing to actually like literally dial up the internet, didn't you? So you had that dial-up
Yeah,
noise
yeah.
when you connected. I started my first proper job the year after, and there we were a media company, but we had an internet room where the one computer with the internet lived, and you had to make bookings on a bit of paper on the door in half-hour slots if you want to go and use the internet to research anything or anything like that. So that even the computers that we were using had email on, but they weren't internet connected. So, it's not that, well, it doesn't seem that long ago to me. It probably seems long ago to some people listening, but, we're only talking, 26 years ago.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I remember, like you, at the college, you'd have to book in advance if you wanted to use the internet. I like the idea of you having half an hour slots, Martin, at your job. It took about half an hour to flip and get online. Um, my my dad has always been quite an early adopter of tech. He still is now. He's much better educated. He's well up compared to me on new developments and that. I do remember the internet coming into our house, but I think it might have been slightly later. But yeah, that was the start anyway. People were starting to get access to it. Most watched film in the UK at the time, 1999, it was The Phantom Menace, which was Star Wars Episode 1. If you remember, they started doing the prequels to the Star Wars films. That was a huge talking point in popular culture. Do you want to have a guess at what the most watched TV show in the UK was in 1999?
Ooh,
It's fairly obvious.
Friends?
No.
No.
This is a single episode, mind. This is
single
like
episode.
single episode of a long running show. It was Coronation
Yeah,
Street.
right.
An episode in March 1999 was the most watched show in the country. It was one of those, culminations apparently of a story where somebody was going to get married, but she knew her fiance was two-timing her. One of those stories. It's
I know we're going vastly off course here, but again, this was a period of time where, you had 4 channels and then you had the Sky channel as well, but you had to watch what was being broadcast. And this isn't the same time. I'm sure this is in the 80s. And there was a whole thing on Coronation Street with Mike Baldwin, Ken Barlow, and Deirdre Barlow, Love Triangle. Now, I've seen footage of a game at Old Trafford where during the match, they announce on the scoreboard which fella Deirdre's gone off with, because it was such a seriously, it's such a big talking point in culture that people were going, "Oh, I'm not sure if I want to win the match because we're going to find out who Deirdre goes off with." You had to watch it at 7:30 because you couldn't record it.
It's
So they announced it on the scoreboard,
aye.
and there was a big cheer from the Stretford end.
It's there were big talking points in the papers. Those stories. I actually I don't particularly remember this storyline. It was Rita's adopted daughter.
Well, lads.
I don't remember the story, as I say, lads, but I think I think that character's still now in Coronation Street. And you're dead right. My mum would have Coronation Street on. So even if I wasn't watching it, I would be aware of it and I know what was happening. As I say, I don't particularly remember the story. It wasn't quite as famous as, when like Gail Platt gets driven into a lake or something and by what was her husband?
Richard.
Yes, exactly. It wasn't quite as
Alan Bradley gets done in by a tram in Blackpool.
You know too much about that, Martin.
Up to a
lads,
point, I was a Corrie aficionado.
if you get chance, lads, to repeat old episodes of Cora on ITV3, and it's genuinely Kelvin.
This has been hard enough listening to this.
You're pretending, but it's really interesting watching.
Oh God!
I'm trying to make a serious point about.
Okay, I'm listening. I'm listening.
But it's interesting watching how we lived our lives back then. A lot of TV is about people who were rich and powerful and maybe lived different lives, but a soap back then really does hammer home what the technology was like. Somebody would get like a flip phone and everyone on the street would be like, whoa, what's this? So yeah, Coronation Street was ruling the airwaves. The biggest selling single in the UK. Now, Kelvin, I know you're not a fan of Coronation Street, but you are a fan of Britney Spears. You have admitted that to me in many moments of weakness. Baby One More Time was the biggest selling single in 1999. Sunderland, just looking at Sunderland, the city, rather than the national stories. Obviously, the Nissan stuff was big news that there was going to be a new car and it was going to roll off the production lines at the Sunderland plant. But more local to home, we had the construction of the Winter Gardens kicking off. I mean, the Winter Gardens now are still a huge visitor attraction. I read this week that it's going to be closed for a prolonged period for renovation and modernisation. Park Lane Interchange opened. The Panto at the end of the year at the Sunderland Empire was Aladdin, starring.
Oh no, it wasn't.
Starring. I should have get those sound effects up again, Martin. I knew that one should have come. It was starring amongst other people. I don't know if you two lads know these, but there was a duo on CBeebies called Dick and Dom. You might have missed them, Martin, by the time you moved abroad, and Kelvin, depending on the age of your kids.
I remember Dick and Dom.
Well, for some reason, the Empire only had one half of the duo. And
I hope it was Dom, was it?
It was Richard. It was Richard. So, also starring alongside Richard was Cobra from Gladiators. And I don't remember this, but Billy Hardy was part of the cast. So there you go. That was packing them in at the Empire. And very sadly, in 1999, I'm sure a lot of Sunderland fans will remember. It was highly contentious, but that was the year Folks Breweries closed down. So big year for the club, big year for the city, and I enjoyed my little walk down memory lane, researching all of that yesterday.
Very good. And a big year for Coronation Street too. 1999, as we say, Andrew, is a lot of very memorable games for Sunderland, right? So we played 48 games in the calendar year. Do I have a guess at how many we won out of 48? Now, bear in mind, this was, winning the championship, then going into the Premier League or Premiership. How many games do you reckon we won out of 48, including cup games?
Well, I mean, I remember that year Man United did like a historic treble, and we knocked them off the headlines. We were the big story, not Man United's not Man United's dramatic Champions League win. So we must have won a lot. Kelvin, have you got any guesses? Look at Kelvin. Look at Kelvin reading through his
I am
notes.
looking. I am
He's
looking at
got
it.
his socks off.
Oh. I don't know, 20 odd? 20, like high 20s, early 30s, maybe? Is that
We
fair?
won. We won 30 games, drew 10, and only lost 8 in that whole calendar year. Remember who the first game of the year was against? It was an FA Cup tie.
Yeah.
Was that the John Aldridge fiasco?
No.
Oh.
Lincoln City in the FA Cup. We won 1-0 with a Gavin McCann goal. Martin Scott went off injured early on. McCann came on as a sub to replace him. I think that might be McCann's first goal for us, but I might be wrong. That's just off the top of my head.
He'd only just joined a couple of months prior.
Yeah.
It was, if I remember rightly, I think that was Martin Scott's last game for us as well. He got stretchered off. It was a nasty one, I think.
It was.
It
was.
But yeah,
that
you
kind
might
of
be right
opened the
about
door.
McCann.
Opened the door properly for Mickey Gray at left back. It's really always like Martin Scott. You would always get Martin Scott in at left back if he could. The last game of 1999, the last year of the last game of the millennium. Who was that against? Game at the Stadium of Light.
Man U?
Big game, memorable game. Manchester United, that's right, 2-2 at the Stadium of Light when we were kind of battling out up the top, weren't we, at that point? Finished the millennium off nicely. And look, there's tons of games that we could talk about. Obviously, we've said there was 30 wins in the calendar year, so there's tons that we could pick out. There's the games at Bury and at Stockport towards the end of that championship season were brilliant. Obviously, I think we got promotion at one and got the title at the other. Beating Newcastle in the rain with Ruud Gullit getting Shearer and Ferguson onto the bench and Kevin Phillips lobbing that or tipping that one over Tommy Wright and pouring rain down at their place and Bally hitting the bar with a sliding tackle. We had the 5-0 win over Derby at Pride Park, and then I think we followed that up in the following midweek with another 5-0 win at Walsall. We were scoring goals for fun at some points. Had a couple of testimonials. We talked about Kevin Ball's testimonial against Sampdoria. Jimmy McNabb also had his testimonial at the end of that season too. But there's one game, isn't there? One game in 1999 that stands out, and it's an obvious pick. But Sunderland 4, Chelsea 1, 4th of December, 1999. And it was such a good game for so many reasons, wasn't it? Like Chelsea at the time, I think we were talking there, I think it was in the Schwartz quotes that he'd said, Manchester United, Arsenal and Chelsea are the three big best teams in the Premiership. And Chelsea were really the cosmopolitan team, weren't they? They'd somehow completely erased the previous reputation and repositioned themselves as this glamorous, lovely, upmarket club, signing all of these players from here, there, and everywhere. They were the first club, I think, weren't they, to name a full starting 11 with no English players in a game against Southampton. And we did that previous with them because when we were in the Premiership a couple of years earlier, they'd come up to Roker Park. Ruud Gullit was the manager. And who else did they had? I think they had Flo playing for them. Di Matteo was playing, Zola was playing.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a little bit early for Flo, but there was a number of good players. Like Ruud Gullit was player manager, and he was fantastic. Even though they got beat 3-0, we turned them over. Kevin Ball, Craig Russell, and there was an own goal as well in the first half, wasn't there? But Ruud Gullit was magnificent. I remember watching him that game and just going, you see, even though he was a little bit past his best and obviously on the wrong side of a 3-0 defeat, you could see he was just a star player. His touch was beautiful, and the only player I've watched like that. I remember watching Glenn Hoddle for Swindon at Roker Park, and even he was playing as a sweeper, and just his touch and his passing, he's going different level, completely different level. This game, though, at Stadium of Light, 3 years later, obviously held some significance because we'd started the season off at Chelsea. And, if we, again, look back at that summer, losing all of those players, yes, of course, we signed Stefan Schwartz, as we've talked about, and we'd won the league by a country mile, and Kevin Phillips and Al Quinn were scoring all the goals. We went in with a bit of confidence, but also a bit of concern because of the turnover in the team. And Chris Lumsden played at Stamford Bridge. Fredgaard made his debut, made his only league appearance, I think, wasn't it? For Sunderland that day in the open day of the season. We got turned over. Poirier scored a brilliant goal down there. But we very quickly picked ourselves up and we came back to the Stadium of Light, beat Watford 2-0. I think Watford had come up with us as well that season before, and Graham Taylor was manager, and Phillips scored against his former club. I think he got a couple of goals that night, didn't he? And that kind of gave Phillips very confidence that he could score in the Premier League. Newcastle was our second win that season, our fifth game. So it wasn't as if we kind of hit the ground completely running, but we were picking up points. We had a couple of defeats. We got beat at Leeds and obviously at Chelsea. But then we started scoring goals. We beat Derby 5-0 away. We beat Bradford 4-0 away. In between those two games, Stefan Schwartz got his first goal for Sunderland against Sheffield Wednesday. Then we played Chelsea in December. And when you look back at the fixtures, the previous home game we played Liverpool and we got beat 2-0. And it really was the first home. We played Arsenal early on at home and drew 0-0 against them. But we got beat 2-0 at home off Liverpool. And this Chelsea game, you're thinking, this is going to be a real test for us. Is this just a thing where we can beat the teams lower down in the league? Can we actually take on these bigger teams at home? And the injuries that we had going into this game, you look at the team that lined up. I think we had Paul Thirlwell and Eric Roy in the centre of midfield. Stefan Schwartz was there. But he was still on the left-hand side. Nicky Sumby was on the right. Darren Williams and Jody Cracker at the back because Steve Bold had picked up injuries. Butler was out. And you're kind of thinking, going into this game against this Chelsea side that have Gianfranco Zola and like Torre Andrea Flo is obviously a bit of a joke for Sunderland now, but at the time he was a good Premier League striker, scoring goals. Poirier in midfield was a brilliant player for them. Had Marcel Desailly, obviously a regular for France, lining up in the centre of defence for them. You go, obviously we've got Kevin Phillips and Niall Quinn together at one end of the pitch, or Tommy Sorensen in goal, but the rest of that spine, you go, we're down to our second or third choices in these positions. We were decimated in that spine, which makes it interesting when you look back at it, doesn't it? He didn't put Schwartz in the centre. It's a strange one, but obviously he was doing a good job. I think tactically he did enable Mickey Gray to provide a bit of an outlet. But the atmosphere around this game was brilliant. And I remember me and my dad always went to the match together. And the start of that season, he'd got a job in Ireland, so he'd had to go over to Ireland. This was the first game he'd been able to come back for. And back in those days, of course, you didn't get every game live. You didn't get dodgy streams, all that sort of stuff. You were relying on wherever the Irish TV showed at the time. And the game starts, and we just go nuts, don't we? The crowd's up for it. Eric Roy dances through the Chelsea defence, puts a ball in. Quinny just stabs it home in the opening minute. 1-0 up. Phillips, then after 20-odd minutes, scores one of the best goals that you'll see. picks the ball up. It doesn't seem much on, does it? But he just drives towards their defence. How is it in the top corner? Like it was on the match of the day opening credits for ages after that, wasn't it? It was just such a good goal. Phillips gets another one, and Quinney gets a goal where I think we had a corner and came back and he's over at the back post, gets it down on his chest and just lashes it with his left foot. And Chelsea are just shell-shocked. They're absolutely decimated. I remember turning around with Yago and being like this all season. It hadn't quite been out all season, but it had been pretty good. But we just played a different level of football in those opening 45 minutes. Second half kind of petered out a little bit. Poyet gets a goal back, but they're never going to get back into the game. And there's that famous story, isn't it, where Desai comes into the Chelsea dressing room after the game, and he's been absolutely ran ragged by Niall Quinn. He's just been dominated. And Desai was a physical player, wasn't he? He was a physical player. He was strong in the tackle, good in the air. He comes in the dressing room absolutely shell-shocked, and he just goes, "Who is this Quinn?" He's never heard of him before, but he's just absolutely had his life. I think it was Jody Morris, who was also part of that team, told a story in the podcast about how Desai was just like, could not believe what he just had to try to deal with and couldn't deal with.
Yeah.
And it was, that's just one, and I think all of us can probably rattle off 3 or 4 or 5 games where you go, that was a perfect day at the Stadium of Light. And that was a perfect day at the Stadium of Light. Chelsea, again, one of the best teams in the country.
Yeah.
And for us to lay that marker down with 4 or 5 of our starting 11 missing was just it was a pinnacle of that season. It was a high point of that season for me. Absolutely superb.
It just captures that season, that game. I think, if you had to pick a game that captured the season, I would say have a look at that. Have a look at that. I don't think Desai came out for the second half, did he?
No, he didn't. No, that's right. He got took off at half time.
My one of my memories of that game, I mean, the football was fantastic. It was probably the best 45 minutes of football that I'd seen in. I don't know if I'd seen a better 45 minutes of football, to be honest. But I'd taken my son to that game, and we were right behind the goal. Phillips's goal, I'm going to say to you here, if the net hadn't have been there, it would have hit me in the face. That shot, that's it. That's where we were sitting. And right behind us when we got in, I think I've told you this story before, but it is my memory of that game. This old boy come in. I mean, he was, honestly, he must have been in his late 70s, early 80s, struggled to his seat. We got our eye on him. I was sort of helping him. He wasn't even sitting at the end of the row, I gets him sat down. So even before the game had started, we'd had a little bit of a chat, We're watching the game. The lads go off at half time. I'm like, this is brilliant. My boy's loving it. We turn round and the old fella's hardly moved and he's like staring. He stares at my boy and he stares at me. I says, have you enjoyed that? He says, by Christ, lad, if our lass was still alive, she'd be in for a rich night tonight. Of course. I'm like laughing, and then I looked at our lad and at the boy, and he could be. I mean, I'm sure you've all had kids that go through these periods where if they latch onto something, they won't leave it alone.
Yeah.
And he just kept saying to me, "What did he mean by a rich night tonight, Dad? What did he a quiet night tonight? What does he mean by that? Oh my God! Even going home in the car, he was saying, "I still don't understand what that man meant." That I think it was because he knew there was. I think he had in England that there was. What a bloody moment it was! The only thing I was sorry about was more people didn't hear it. And he just sat there. He says, "Aye, bye, Christ, lad." Oh, it was just a brilliant 45 minutes of football. Just
I
brilliant.
think I don't think I've seen a better 45 minutes of football from Sunderland than that. I think it was perfect. And I think if you want to see the Peter Reid era encapsulated in 45 minutes, that was everything good that Reid did at Sunderland.
Because
in that
that was a
45
top
minutes.
team we were playing. That was a
Top
very,
team.
very, very good team that we were playing, who had been everywhere. And,
Yeah.
Arsenal, Liverpool, they'd been everywhere and done teams on their own patch. There was no reason for them to think they couldn't do us on their
No,
own
that's right.
patch. But aye, brilliant.
Excellent stuff. We are going to take a very short break, and then when we come back, Kelvin's got something exceptionally good prepared for us about a former goalkeeper. We'll see you soon.
This episode is brought to you by Google Chrome. You think you know a browser, but Gemini and Chrome? That's new. It can help you with practically anything on the web, like restoring a vintage motorcycle from a 50-page restoration blog, or finally break down that long article you've had open for weeks. Gemini and Chrome is here for it. Ready to make anything online make sense? There's no place like Chrome. Check responses, setup required, compatibility and availability varies, 18+.
Amazon Health AI presents Painful Thoughts.
Why did I search the internet for answers to my cold sore problem? Now I'm stuck down a rabbit hole filled with images of alarmingly graphic sores in various stages of ooze. I can clear my search history, but I can never unsee that.
Don't go down the rabbit hole. Amazon Health AI gets you the right care fast. Healthcare just got less painful.
The perfect lunch combo. That first bite of your favorite sub, followed by ice-cold Pepsi. Add a couple of friends, and now that's next level. Suddenly, the laughs get louder, the stories keep flowing, and the food tastes better. Because Pepsi brings out more flavor, more fun, and more of the moment. Food deserves Pepsi. Grab a Pepsi Zero Sugar today.
Welcome back to How Are You, the podcast for the third and I think final part today of our very first episode of the Sunder Years, but we will see.
Can you guarantee that,
No.
Martin?
I wouldn't guarantee anything, mate, I tell you. So we've covered a signing or a person who made some news in the year. We've covered a game from that year, and now we're going into an anniversary, Kelvin, and this is the anniversary of the last Sunderland goalkeeper to win the league.
Correct. What a treat this was. Delving into Johnny Mopson is what I'm going to try and do some justice to in, how long have I got? An hour and a half, did you say? Or,
That was for part one, Kelvin.
right.
Hour and a half just for the first section.
You lads know I love my keepers, and what a treat it was having a right delve, a right deep dive, I think we like to call this, into Johnny Mopson. He passed away on the 19th of August in 1999, and he was prior to passing, he was the last living member of the 1937 FA Cup winning team. He was born on the 2nd of May, 1917 in Birkenhead, but he moved to Swindon at a very early age for his father's work. He left school. He played local football in Wiltshire as he tried his hand at a number of different things, like being a grocer boy, a milk boy, and then a baker's boy, before deciding to take up an offer from Reading to earn his living playing football. There's a bit of debate about was, 1934, 35-ish, somewhere around about there, he gets this offer. When he went to Reading, he quickly went out on loan to Guildford City in the Southern Premier League, and then in the 1935-36 season, he was recalled back to Reading, but he'd only played 2 games for Reading in the Division 3 South before Johnny Cochran, the Sunderland manager, came calling. He'd only played 2 games. It was what prompted Cochran was we've spoken about this on This Week, the tragic death of young Sunderland goalkeeper Jimmy Thorpe in February 1936, which had made national headlines. But at that point of his death, Sunderland were in pole position in the First Division, and they did have a backup keeper called Matt Middleton, and he came in and had taken over in goal. He started well enough. He started with 3 wins and a draw. But after this, he conceded 15 goals in a winless 5-game streak, and the last being a 6-0 battering at Middlesbrough. And Matt Middleton kind of took a little bit of the blame for the big defeat. So even though Sunderland was still top of the league, Cochran decided to act. What a fine Mapson proved to be. It was some gamble by Cochran, though. 18 years old, only 2 games in the 3rd division was hardly the CV of a title-winning goalkeeper.
That's incredible, isn't it, when you think about that? Like, you wonder how on earth they actually got onto him and fancied him.
Well, the scouting team, wherever they may have been, what a job they did. The other thing about this that I find incredible is Johnny Cochran. He had a right liking for going north of the border. His history was north of the border, and he picked up some brilliant players north of the border. And where this came from, I don't know. I've not been able to nail how, because I was intrigued by it. Who put him on to Johnny Mapson? Where did that come from? I still haven't found where that came from. He makes his debut in a 5-0 win versus Portsmouth at Roker Park, and Captain Rich Carter, who could be a lad that was, if he had an opinion, he expressed it. Rich Carter described it as a confident display in that game. He remains in goals for the next 6 games as Sunderland went on to finish the season league champions, 8 points ahead of their nearest rivals, Derby County. And unfortunately, Johnny Mapson hadn't played enough games to get the league winners medal, but he wouldn't have to wait long for a bit of bling to come his way. Yes, in 1999, just before his death, I think he was talking to a friend of the pod, Rob Mason. Actually, I'm sure this was where I read this, and he told him about when he first came to Sunderland from Reading, and he remembered the shock of seeing shoeless children in the streets, and the level of poverty that he hadn't really witnessed in the South. And that was one of his overriding sort of impressions of just coming to the area. By the start of the 1936-37 season, he's installed as the number 1. Matt Middleton's his understudy. Whilst the defence of the league title was not going that well, it wasn't going smoothly. They weren't out of it, but it wasn't going smoothly. On October the 28th at Roker Park, Sunderland beat Arsenal to win the Charity Shield and win that 2-1 with goals from Carter and Burbanks. Johnny Mapson's form is consistently good as the season progresses. He grows into the role, grows into playing in front of big crowds and playing in front of this effectively a star-studded lineup in front of him. He helps make Sunderland a harder team to score against. The stats from the 2 seasons sort of show you that there was, they definitely had less goals scored against them. That's not all his responsibility, but he certainly helps tighten the defence up. Despite there was a supposed curse on Sunderland winning the FA Cup. They were allegedly destined never to win the FA Cup. But the team launches its cup campaign against Southampton, who were in the second division then, and it still was their biggest gate up to that point in their history. When Sunderland came to play there was 20,134 people. So Sunderland win 3-2, but would actually gone 3 goals up, and Southampton kind of came back and made it a squeaky kind of end to the game. That was followed up. The next cup tie was a tough game at Kenilworth Road, and Sunderland limped away from that with a 2-2 draw. But Johnny Mapson that day played a great game. His efforts, his performance that day probably kept us in the cup, and we managed to get away with a 2-each draw. Took them back to Roker Park and beat them 3-1 in the replay. There then was a straightforward victory against Swansea Town, 3-0 at Roker Park, where I think I did read one of the bits I read was apparently Johnny Mapson touched the ball 3 times in anger in this game, so it was a pretty one-sided game, and he wasn't troubled too much. But they having beaten Swansea, the next on the campaign trail for the cup was a big hit, a heavyweight with Wolves, and they would play them at Molineux. Was where they would play them. Around about this time, Johnny Cochran, he embarks on a program. If you look at the league games, he starts resting one or two or three of his players, and there's a feeling abroad that it's the cup that we're aiming for here, and that the leagues we can't defend our titles, so we're gonna focus our efforts on the cup. Seems to be what Cochran goes for. The only player that's never rested is Johnny Mapson. He plays 51 games in the season, which it's fantastic when you think he's still he's in his first season of top class football, and he's just 18, 19 years old when he's doing this. Prior to the 6th round tie, Sunderland decamp from the northeast. It's a goldfish bowl at times. People are getting very excited about the cup, and they spent a week at the plush Bushy Hotel and Spa in Hertfordshire. Is where they decamp to. And early in the week, young Johnny receives a letter with a London postmark, and stating that he would be hanged if Wolves did not win the tie. And it was signed from the syndicate. So you think, my God, what would you do with that, Later in the week, another letter arrives from the same source informing them that if Sunderland did lose the game, there would be a hefty handout with his name on it waiting at a post office on the Saturday night. And it adds, the ground will be wet, easy to slip, offering him an excuse to throw the game. Johnny Mapson's having none of that. And this seems to be his character. He does seem to be quite an upright, straight up kind of character. He's having none of it. He passed the letters to Johnny Cochran, who alerted the local authorities and the press to the issue. Cochran was never convinced that it was legitimately life-threatening. He believed the letters were from some brazen Wolves fan trying to put the wind up his young goalkeeper, But there had been, there had been a situation with the Everton keeper, I think, earlier in the the season where he'd received mail offering a bribe to throw a game against Spurs, I think it was, if I remember it rightly. So it was kind of abroad, this kind of thing. Mopson, he was interviewed by the press, and his words were, "Whoever was silly enough to send these letters will get no change out of me or Sunderland." And that was his attitude to it. And true to his word, what a game he plays. Apparently, every newspaper report you look at on that game at Wolves, it's played in atrocious conditions. But he plays a fantastic game, and Sunderland force a 1-1 draw. They go to a replay at Roker Park. It finishes 2-2 after extra time. So it went to a third game at Hillsborough, and Sunderland absolutely run away with it 4-0. But that game at Molineux, there's kind of a sense of I'm really coming of age in the team, and I think Rich Carter had some really good things to say about him that day. So they made it to the semi-final, and in the semi-final, they've got a bit of an unknown quantity in Division 3 South Millwall, and they get off Millwall, get off to a cracking start. They score a really good goal. And again, Johnny Mopson in his defence play a really good half, just keeping the score down to 1-0 as Sunderland's much vaunted forward line struggled to get going in the game. However, he was largely redundant in the second half. Sunderland scored 3. And we're on our way to Wembley, and they've given up on the league. They're not, there's no way they're going to win the league, and players are being rested left, right, and centre. And it was something that Johnny Cochran took a bit of stick for in the press, but he definitely had his eyes on the cup in that season. Wembley, they're playing Preston North End. It's a game of two halves again. The cup ties seem to have gone like that. And in that first half, Mopson again, there's a little bit of a pattern to this when you read about the match reports of some of the bigger games. Mopson stood strong in the first half alongside Gorman, Thompson, and Johnson at the back, to keep the score down to just one goal. It was 1-0 to Preston at half time. But again, that switch, second half, Gurney, Carter, Burbanks, and Sherwood, the cup went to Sunderland for the very first time. The cup goes to Sunderland. And 19-year-old Johnny Mopson is the goalkeeper, and he's the youngest keeper ever to win the cup up to that point. And it was a record that stood till 1975. Can any of you lads remember the keeper that took that record in 1975? There was a big deal made of it.
I'm going to step out because I read this stat yesterday.
Oh, right.
No,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
go for it. I'm struggling with that one.
Yeah. Well, it was Mervyn Day at West Ham who and played for West Ham a long time. Did Mervyn Day, but it was some record, and although he was 19, it was his 20th birthday, the day after the cup final. So what a great birthday present for him. There's a very famous line about that birthday present where the Queen presents the trophy for the first time and says it's a wedding present to Rich Carter because he got married in the week before so there was a fair bit of celebration going on. What kind of keeper was Johnny Mopson? It's fine talking about all the stats and everything. What kind of keeper? This is what I've been able to find out. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't given lovely dives, fantastic dives for the cameras and stuff like that. That wasn't his game. He had a great positional sense, and he was a good decision maker. He he made his decisions to go, to stay. He seemed to get the majority of them right. He also possessed a prodigious ground kick and kick from hand, which played a bigger part in games in them days, especially when you think of the state of some of the pitches. You're not going to be rolling the ball out and, playing on a crown green turf there. So this was something that was in his armory. He was an assured handler of the ball, and there's a couple of mentions of this unique way that he used to catch the ball. It was like it was like hand over hand. He whenever he caught the ball, one hand would be on the top of the ball and the other hand on the bottom, rather than at the side of the ball. It was kind of a unique way that he did that. So the cup was won. Fantastic. The curse was put to bed, and Johnny Mapson played a fantastic role in that campaign to win the cup. The following season, in the league, you still can see from the stats, from the newspaper reports, that Mapson's helping the defence. He's helping. There was always this thing with that team coming up to that period that they were great going forward, but they couldn't stop the goals from going in. I think the season they won the league, there was something like the eighth, that they had the 8th worst record of goals conceded in the league when they won it in 35-36. So he definitely makes a difference. Makes Sunderland harder to score against. But Sunderland finished 8th in that season, and then we roll on to 1938-39. It was a season of great change for Sunderland, because Johnny Cochran was struggling to get the team to replicate the success of previous years. I mean, what 3 brilliant years that he'd had. Finishing runner up in 35, league champions 36, FA Cup winners 37. How do you keep that going? Is one of the biggest jobs in football, isn't it? But he resigns at the end of February, and after a brief sort of period of caretaker managers. I think George Crowe stepped into that for a little while as secretary. Bill Murray comes back, a former player, comes back and takes over. Sunderland finished 16th, and then the war, and there's trouble afoot. The war comes along, war's declared. Season 39-40, it was only 3 games old when war was declared, and league football suspended. And whilst there was some organised football, most of it was played in a regional or localised basis. And Johnny Mapson, what he does, he doesn't stay in at Sunderland. He goes back home, and he's part of his war effort. He works at an engineering factory, and he plays he turns out for Reading in the war leagues, and helps them win the London Cup in 1941. I always think, whenever I read about players in the war, the First World War, the Second World War, if you look at where he's at, he loses 7 years of his career to the war, and he's in the prime. You might argue for a goalkeeper, it's not the prime. He's 21 years old. So there's an argument there to say that keepers probably have a bit more longevity and mature into their game. But he loses 7 years of his first class career to the war. He toured South Africa with an England 11 in 1939. This is something that I think does cut across him and across his career. But that was as close as he got in international recognition. you've got the war, you've got the form of two great goalkeepers, Frank Swift and a lad called Sam Bartram, who played for Charlton. He was from Jarrah. He was a local lad from Jarrah, and those two are in front of him in terms of international recognition. But he does tour with an international 11 to South Africa. But that's it as far as I can see in terms of international recognition. When league football resumes after the war in 46, 47, there's just Eddie Burbanks, Len Duns and him. They're the only players left from the 1937 Cup winning team still playing for Sunderland. So there's just the three of them. There's been a massive turnaround. He remains Sunderland's first choice keeper from 1946 to 1953. He played with Matt Busby during the war. Yes, and upon Busby's recommendation, Man City had courted him and tried to sign him. But out of loyalty to Sunderland, he refused to go. This seems to be part of his character, that if I'm doing this, I'm doing this. He's a straight up and down kind of character. And he doesn't go. He doesn't go. An amusing story from 47, 48 that I found. Again, you get lots of good things written about Johnny Mopson. But I sort of, as I'm reading them, I'm thinking, I can see that he's a straight up and down character, but what's he like in the dressing room? What's the cut of his jib, and I picked up this story. He in 1947-48, they played Derby County at Derby, and Rich Carter had signed for Derby, and he would play against his former team, and obviously against Mopson, his former cup final colleague, and in the dressing room before the game, Johnny Mopson had tried to assure his teammates. He said, "Listen, don't worry about Carter and his shooting. I'll deal with that. He would take care of it." Carter scored 4 in the game, including a first half hat-trick. And apparently, after the game, Johnny Mopson saw the funny side of that. It's like, oh yeah, I'll take care of it, kind of thing. So he definitely had a quietly self-depreciating sense of humor. Was evidence there. He does. He does play the 49-50 season. Sunderland come very close to lifting the league title again. Very close. And the only Portsmouth eventually win it. Sunderland are a point behind them, and they just lost their way in the last sort of, I think it was the last 3 or 4 games of the season. They just lost their way, lost some games just before the end of the season, and end up finishing 3rd. But that's probably, apart from the back end of the 35-36 season where they win the league, and then the 1937 cup winning season, that's probably the closest he gets to winning anything else with Sunderland. Sunderland had entered that era that was known as the Bank of England era, with Bill Murray at the helm. And for the people that don't know, Sunderland were buying any player that could be bought for good money. They were buying the best that could be bought, And I think one thing that strikes me about that era, the early part of that era, is it's testament to Johnny Mopson's skill and ability that Bill Murray, he never felt the need to replace Mopson. If Johnny Mopson said he was fit, Johnny Mopson played in Bill Murray's team. By 1952-53, he's plagued with a knee injury that was taking increasing amounts of treatment and recovery time. He's really struggling. So it's not his ability between the sticks that's the problem. It's this injury that's causing problems. On the 21st of March, 1953, 18 years after his debut, he plays his last game for Sunderland in a 3-3 draw against Man City at Roker Park. He doesn't officially retire until 1954. He stays with the squad for a while. I think trying to see whether the knee will recover, but it doesn't. And he retires in 1954. But he never leaves the area. He stays in the northeast. He lives quietly with his family in the Washington area. But he was a highly regarded figure and always welcomed by Sunderland fans wherever he went. I remember, thinking about Johnny Mopson and thinking about him from a personal kind of perspective. I can remember in October 1994, he went with the 1973 FA Cup winning captain Bobby Kerr. He attended the funeral of his 1937 captain and teammate Rich Carter, passed away. It meant that he was the only living member of the 1937 FA Cup winning team. Carter and he were the last two, and and I always remember seeing that on the news, and it prompted me, like triggered me, that I'd seen Bobby Kerr and Johnny Mopson on the same pitch before, and I remembered that in 1973 at the quarter-final game at Roker Park against Luton, who were played in the 37 Cup run. There was a number of the 1937 Cup winning team were introduced to the crowd and came onto the pitch, and including Rich Carter, Bobby Gurney, and they were given a really warm reception by the 50,000 crowd. I mean, there were people around me that had seen them play, older fans that had seen them play, it was such a thrill. I've always loved the history of the club. And even though my head was spinning round 3 times and coming off with our cup run, I could still appreciate that moment, and Johnny Mopson that day, he looked fit enough to don the gloves again. He was a really well kept, fit looking guy. When he was literally trotting around the pitch, I've always remembered that about him. It was lovely. It was a thrill to see them that day. He, as I said at the start, he passed away in August 1999, but he'll be remembered for the 382 appearances for Sunderland between 1936 and 1953. His heroics in the 1937 Cup run, and his career as first choice keeper over a period of 18 years. I reckon it places him in the annals of Sunderland's great goalkeepers, alongside the likes of Ned Doig and Jimmy Montgomery. I wish I'd seen him play.
Brilliant stuff. I don't know if I remember this correctly, but I'm sure when we played that game against Liverpool, the last game at Roker Park, Johnny Mopson was part of the former players who walked around and waved at the crowd and was introduced to the crowd. Because we had an awful lot of players and former managers who came out, but I'm sure Mopson was there.
Yeah.
I'm sure he was.
Yeah. I think you're right, Martin. I was at that game. I'm pretty sure you're right. You're right about that. And in 1992, although there was a bit of controversy about the way the club handled this, there were players that were invited to the cup final, and I have a feeling that he was one of the players that took up the offer to go. Fantastic it's a fantastic era. It's a fantastic sort of period in Sunderland's history. But what makes that is these fantastic characters, and to come from nowhere, to come,
Oh,
no slight on Reading, but 2 games at Reading, and then he's
but
in.
it's remarkable on 2 levels, isn't it? One is the lack of experience he had
Mm,
come into that situation for a club challenging for the league and obviously, going for all of the honours. But to come in to essentially replace Jimmy Thorpe,
mm,
like that in itself, for anybody would be it's so nuanced and layered in term. It's not just a
yeah,
young kid getting plucked from a team and getting given a chance,
yeah,
because everything else that was going on around that,
mm,
it must have
mm.
been such a difficult thing to. But maybe it was that like sort of naivety of youth where you kind of want somebody to come in and take the chance rather than think about it too much.
My,
But
my sense of that, I think you're dead right. My sense of that is a different kind of character might not have been able to deal with that. He
mm,
seems to have been quite a level-headed, calm kind of character, this self-depreciating kind of humor. And he's been able to come in and manage all that. It's mind-boggling, the thought of taking all that on. And remember as well, when you're talking about Jimmy Thorpe, he the story behind that and the roughing up that he'd been given. I mean, if you were a goalkeeper around about the time, because that wasn't the first death of a goalkeeper in that decade. If you were a goalkeeper, you'd be wondering, have I picked the right position to play? Would I not be better off playing right wing or something like that? And getting away from all this roughhousing that was going on of the goalkeepers at the time. Just an intriguing character, and I know I used to say this on This Week, but I would have loved to have seen him play in real life. I would have loved that.
it would be nice to know if he'd ever got to the stage of life, wouldn't it? Because there's just some nice connections there between the 37 success
Yes,
and obviously the league title win inside the year before. I know he
yeah,
only played a small part in that, and as I say, didn't
yeah.
play enough games
He,
to get a medal in those days. But
well, he was
it'd be
here.
nice if he'd been
Yeah,
there.
he was 82 when he passed, and he was living in the Washington area. And it's not impossible to think that
No, it's not.
he got there, but I don't know the answer to that, Martin. It's a good question, that.
Hmm. No, excellent stuff, Kelvin. Good man. Thank you very much. Well, I
Thank
think
you.
that,
Yeah.
I think that brings us to the end of our first, and certainly not the last, episode of what we have called the Sunder Years. 1999, done and dusted. We've had everything from Kevin Phillips to Johnny Maps and Stephen Schwartz to Gail Platt. We've covered it all, haven't we, Andrew?
If we pass the test, Martin, are you going to keep me and Kelvin on for the next
I
episode?
think we might give it another go, mightn't we? Might do it again.
It's
And
it's always
hey,
good fun, man, isn't it? It's
it
always
is.
good fun when we start talking about like Sunderland days of yore.
Nah, brilliant stuff.
Oh, good. Please, can we not have any talk of Coronation Street and EastEnders?
You
Oh
know,
my God!
Kelvin, by saying that, I'm going to deliberately
Every week
do
there'll be
even
a
more.
reference.
Yeah.
I know. I'm stupid, aren't I?
You are.
Yeah.
Anyway, join us next week for what's happening in Weatherfield. No, we've had fun anyway, and we've dug up some memories, and it's always a joy to dig through the record books and find a few things that we didn't know about. And of course, if you have any years that you would like us to dig into specifically, you can drop us an email at howwearthepodcast@safc@gmail.com and give us some suggestions. We'll take them up and have a look at certain players or anniversaries or games that you'd like to hear. So yes, please do get in touch and let us know what you think of the new format as well. I think it's good fun. It's certainly we've got at least 130 odd episodes to pack into it if we do it every year. So, it'll keep us going for a couple of years, won't it?
It's when we start doing the wonder months and the wonder weeks that people think, are these lads running out of steam?
Well, you know what? You could do 1999 again, and it could be a completely different podcast. You have a different game,
Yeah,
different player, different anniversary.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
It's got legs anyway. We've got legs. Anyway, I think we'll wrap it up there. So thank you very much, Andrew. Always a pleasure.
No, the pleasure is all mine. Really enjoyed it.
And thank you, Kelvin, as well.
Thank you, Joe Cocker. That was brilliant.
Yeah, I've just I've just got on YouTube the Farewell to Roker Park videos, and I haven't found Johnny Mapson, but I have found a guy who turned up in the crowd for that game dressed as the fella from The Mask. So
get in. Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant.
I love the fact though, Martin, that you started watching that video. Your kids are not going to see you for the rest of the day, are they? That's just holed up in there looking at old Sunderland videos and what have you.
I need to find if my memory is correct on that one.
In the 70s, Martin, sorry to to keep things going. In the 70s, if you're taking away the green from The Mask, I used to go to football with the lad that looked like The Mask. I'll not say his name, but yeah, he had a face built for radio.
Oh, Kelvin's doing a podcast, my old friend. Kelvin's doing a podcast. I'll enjoy that. I'll listen to that. Oh no, he's slagging us off, saying I had a face for radio. Thanks, pal.
Very good.
Well,
I won't say his name, but I did, in case a number of my friends are wondering, it was my friend that I used to share a flat with.
Was it a he or a she? Was it a he?
I was going to say,
easy, Tiger, easy. No names, no background.
Before we descend any further, I think we'll wrap up this. So we will say goodbye to you for now. We will be back tomorrow, of course, on your daily Sunderland podcast. And of course, there is also tons of stuff over at localreport.sbnation.com. But until tomorrow, it is goodbye from us.
This episode is brought to you by ChatGPT. Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast. Have you guys heard about ChatGPT work? It's the new way to use ChatGPT for bigger multi-step projects. And when you need more than just answers, give ChatGPT work access to your apps and files, and it can create real work documents like spreadsheets, slides, and structured reports. Get started at chatgpt.com by selecting work mode, available on Plus and Pro plans.
I see you. Avatar: Fire and Ash is now streaming on Disney+. It's the film critics are calling the best Avatar yet.
Yeah! Go, 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 go!
A true epic and completely jaw-dropping.
This is the only pure thing in this world.
Return to Pandora on Disney+.
It will be an adventure for the whole fam.
And watch the Oscar-winning phenomenon at home.
This is sick!
Avatar: Fire and Ash, now streaming on Disney+. Rated PG-13.